towards the third act, they start telling us that the moral of the story is that when Odysseus, through his deception with the Trojan horse, conquered Troy, he broke the social contract of the Greek world, and everything is unraveling, and they're heading into a dark age because of this.
From like the very start of the movie, we're kind of introduced into Zeus's law with sort of the suitors that have kind of like taken up custom in the palace. This like idea of like this like unwritten social contract that you had amongst people where, you know, you kind of just like treat people with like common courtesy, or you welcome them in and you sort of try to sort of treat them the right way because you don't know whether it's a god in disguise. And then you kind of see it throughout sort of Odysseus's sort of adventures when he's like stuck with the cyclone. It's like almost like him entering the cyclone's home and again being sort of bad guests, and everywhere that they land and everywhere that they try to go and sort of they try to be accepted as guests or like be accepted as like, you know, just like travelers that are like just sort of trying to provisions so that they can continue their journey on the way home. They just kind of like keep running into difficulties and issues and like keep losing more men. It just kind of felt like the movie was reinforcing that message all throughout the movie. And then like, I think it really came full circle, like in that last act where Odysseus himself is kind of coming as a beggar into it, and he's kind of seeing how some of what's happened around Zeus's law is kind of like starting to unravel.
They absolutely establish Zeus's law and guest right and all of that, and how important that is and how foundational that is to that civilization, because it's a dangerous place. Outside of city walls, there's basically no law. In order to survive, you rely on the kindness of strangers. That is an idea that is absolutely brought home multiple times throughout the movie. What I didn't get at all is why the Trojan War destroyed the idea of guest right or eroded it. The movie did not convince me that that was that impactful or that unusual. Nobody in the movie ever expresses either shock or says, well, if the Greeks did that, that gives me permission to do whatever I want. For example, there's talk about the sea peoples, but we don't actually see people disregarding guest right that strongly on a day-to-day level. We see it with the suitors, definitely, but we don't see it in Sparta, for instance, right? Where Menelaus just follows the old rules, right? He doesn't seem to think that anything has changed. I'm not seeing, like, in the day-to-day how people act, that the rules of civilization are breaking down. We are just getting speeches about how this is the case. If you want to make it about, like, the collapse of norms, right, and the unraveling of the social contract, it couldn't be timelier, right? We're living through a time where that exact thing is happening. It has been happening for a while. And if you're paying attention to it, it's going to freak you out. And then a movie comes out that essentially shows the beginnings of this, of like the rules that used to make things work just being ignored for no good reason, really, right? Nobody's forced to do this, right? Like, that's very timely. If you want to do this, I think I'm totally on board with that, but then you need to do it well, right? And you need to make creative choices that hold up to scrutiny.